Welcome to the award-winning Saints Happy Hour podcast. Seriously, this podcast has won awards. American standards are dropping every day. The show features Ralph, the best host in the world, who can barely pronounce his own name, much less anyone else's.
Marcus Callaway.
Dave is that dude who loves taking bathroom breaks. He's mad about almost anything, so make sure to lower your volume when he speaks.
Put that freaking clown meme back up that I made. Jesus Christ.
Andrew has sources, watches tapes, and knows football. He rarely shows up on time and wants to commit crimes to help the Saints win.
Sean Payton would have done illegal things. Don't tell me I'm wrong, because you know it's true.
Oh, and there's also Kevin, who is great at doing mock drafts, but struggles to actually watch Saints games or have a functioning relationship.
Budrich wants to know how the doctor's doing.
That ended.
Anyway, grab a drink, sit back, and enjoy the insanity.
All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Saints Happy Hour podcast. As always, we are brought to you by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. I get confused, Jeff, and sometimes I have to check the sign that's behind me that people can't see because I got a cute graphic in front of me that Thomas made for me, our producer. So my background, because my house is just in complete chaos. But we are sponsored by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey, as always. I got Jeff Asher with me. Jeff is from AH Datalytics. He is on pregame shows, and I was talking to him, and he had positive data that I am going to cling to like a life raft in this time of peril. I'm not giving up hope. If you see this podcast and the Saints are 3-5, this podcast never happened. This podcast only exists if they beat the Colts some kind of way and get to 4-4. But Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so before we get started, tell the people how to find you on Twitter and what you do for a living, so that they realize I'm not just pulling somebody off the street that's making stuff up.
Well, I'm not on Twitter quite as much as I used to be. I'm at Crimealytics over there.
You're better off for that.
From AH Datalytics. I'm over at Blue Sky, Jeff Asher at bluesky.com or whatever the account is over there. I'm on WDSU occasionally when the numbers suggest something interesting. So with Sharif and Fletcher a bunch of times this year, it's been fun. Team hasn't been fun, but the going on the show and talking about advanced data has been fun. So I'm a data analyst consultant, mostly work in criminal justice data, but really do everything. And my first love is the Saints, so that's the angle I'm going to take.
We had you on for a podcast before. I can't remember the topic. It was like way off topic, and you were like explaining something to our.
It was the GameStop, and
it was GameStop. I was like, explain GameStop to me like I'm 5. That was it. So we have Jeff on. We like Jeff, and I'm friendly with him on Twitter. Like he says, he's not on Twitter anymore. He's probably better for his health that he's not as much anymore. But Jeff, I'll use a point of data for the Saints that it was regression. Regression to the mean, and it's been a positive thing. I said in the preseason in one of my co-hosts, Kevin, we did a hot takes podcast, and we did like 3 hot takes. And my scorching hot takes I was like, the Saints are going to lead the league in turnovers. They're going to create turnovers. Like the defense last year, they were too good to only intercept 7 passes. Like that's going to regress, but it's going to be in the positive direction. And it has been. They've created a ton of turnovers through 7 games. So you look around the Saints, and we see crummy offensive line that's terrible. And we see a pass rush that's bad by advanced metrics. But what are you seeing that you look around and you're like, Atlanta's 4-3, Tampa's 3-3, Carolina's 0-6. Like, this is still doable. Like, what data do you see from the Saints? Because if you look at it from a casual fan, you're like, this is awful. Derek Carr's yelling at everybody. It's terrible. But like, what do you see that you're like, no, don't give up hope. This can still happen. We can still win this crummy division.
Well, so if you look at the advanced metrics sort of at a team level, where let's ignore who the head coach is, let's ignore injuries or anything. We look at the first 7 weeks through either EPA, expected points added, or DVOA. Was it like defense adjusted value over average? I forget what DVOA stands for. But you look at both of those, and they tell us that the Saints are the best team in the division. They haven't been yet, but the Saints right now have played 4 games against teams with a positive EPA per play, offense and defense, a net EPA per play. And they played 3 games against teams with a negative EPA per play. And do you want to know what the results are in those 7 games?
Give them to me.
They've won all 3 games where they're playing against a team that right now has a negative EPA per play. And they've lost all 4 games against a team that's got a positive EPA per play. So Tampa is just barely positive. And the Saints, thanks to the strength of the defense, are a real net positive right now.
I can't believe Green Bay is positive.
Green Bay is like 0.01. I mean, it's just barely.
That loss just every single week it burns me more, Jeff. I look at them, I'm like, God dang it.
Right. Well, but the advantage is that only 3 of the last 10 games are against a team with a positive EPA per play. The schedule sets up to be so easy.
It does.
That and they should be better than a lot of these teams. The other point that I would make, the other advanced stat I would point to, DVOA, the Saints are 15. The second best team in the NFC South, Tampa, is in DVOA is 20th. Atlanta's like 25th. Carolina's 32nd. So the Saints have 5 games against teams that are 22nd and lower left on the schedule. And the team that has had the best DVOA in the NFC South has won the division every year since, I believe, 2015. 2014 was weird when it was at Carolina or Atlanta won, and they went 7-8-1.
Yeah, Carolina did 2014.
But so they were all bad then. That year, New Orleans had the best DVOA. So those stats both point to positives. Atlanta has invested so much in their running game, and their EPA per play is worse than New Orleans in the running game. I mean, they invested in Bijan, and how you're worse at running the ball than
how much though for Atlanta, like how much when you look at EPA, like how much do fumbles and turnovers like crush your EPA?
Oh, incredibly. If you took EPA per play out from Derek Carr, or the turnovers out from Derek Carr, because he had a pick 6. So you assume your EPA on a drive where you're starting at like the 25-yard line. Let's say you're gonna get 1 point. Your EPA is 1 point on that drive, and then you throw a pick 6, which was his fault, but also was a tip ball and weird things happened. So it wasn't like he threw it right over the middle and the guy just picked it off cleanly and ran. You got a -8 EPA per play because you expected 1 point on that drive and you lost 7. So it's an enormous change there. Derek Carr has been awful, and this has been his worst year since
forever.
Since 2014, his rookie season was atrocious, and like not even close. And he was bad last year and the year before, and he has been scores worse than that.
Keep going.
You kind of have to assume he'll regress, kind of like Baker is regressing back to his norm. Baker was hot to start, and he's kind of regressing. I don't know if you watched the JT O'Sullivan video.
Yeah, no. The thing I would say about Baker is Baker's good start was based on third down pixie dust. Like they were just incredible on third down, and like that, it was like that's not a sustainable thing. The interesting thing with I think that the NFC South, and I said this on Twitter, is it comes down to each team has an incredible flaw, or as I like to say, they just step on the rakes. But each of these teams, Atlanta, the Saints, and Tampa, they step on the same rake every single week. And for Tampa, they can't run the ball. You probably know this. You look at the data; they cannot run the ball at all. For the Saints, it's red zone, right? They historically stink in the red zone. For Atlanta, they just keep turning the ball over. Like they have. Like basically they played the Redskins. They lost, I think, 17 points of expected EPA because they had like 2 red zone turnovers. They did it again against Tampa. Like Desmond Ridder, he fumbled literally walking into the end zone. He fumbled a snap at the 1-yard line. So I guess to me, like when you look at the data, and you could put a little bit of your fan hat on too, like which one of these things for the Saints, Atlanta, and Tampa, which one of these things that they're so terrible at is like most likely to regress back to not good, just like less catastrophic?
I I mean, I'm a homer, so we're gonna get that right out of the way. I feel like we have enough data on Desmond Ritter. He is what he is. And I don't think that Atlanta is. They're going to do it with smoke and mirrors and trying to do that and win with defense. That's just the way Atlanta's going to play. They've also won 3 games on last second field goals.
That's right.
I don't know how sustainable that is. Tampa's. I think they've had the best offseason. I think that their bet on Baker was better than the Saints' bet on Derek Carr. But I don't know how
that
good
is so depressing.
Tampa
really was like. Depressing. They were like, we're taking a $36 million cap charge in Brady. We're not breaking it into 2. We're taking it all right now. And we went to the dollar store and we bought the broken lawn gnome. And it was still a better decision than Derek Carr. Like, it's so depressing.
But Baker, he's not good. And so
he's not.
If you assume he's going to regress, and Derek Carr, you have to assume he's going to regress to at least his historical average. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I don't know how sustainable it is for him to be just so bad. I mean, he's so much worse. You look at like throws 20 yards or more. He's so much worse than any year of his career, even his rookie year. And he's got real weapons. Nobody has more throws than he does, 20 yards or more, and he's got like the 3rd worst EPA per play on throws of 20 yards or
like
more.
The Saints are like a drunk person at the blackjack table, and they're like doubling down on 6. Like, what are you doing? Just like, we're throwing deep. It's not working. We're going to keep on doing it. Keep on the drinks coming. It's horrific.
Yeah. What worries me is that Atlanta, you look at the team, like future strength of schedule.
That's right.
The only team with an easier schedule is Atlanta. And I know we get them twice, and that's sort of the saving grace. But if the numbers suggest that it should be Atlanta and New Orleans going forward, or maybe Tampa, but that's not really. I've named 3/4 of the league, and we all know it's not going to be Carolina, who the numbers agree are the worst team in the league. You look at like 4th down percentage. The Saints are actually going for it about league average. Some of it's been forced, but Dennis Allen, that tendency has sort of, it was maddening last year. It has sort of evened out. The Saints are scoring the most offensive points per game in the division.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, Tampa's the last, and the Saints have the second best, defensive points per game allowed. So all of these numbers, but they all suggest one thing, and then you think, well, Dennis Allen's the coach, Pete Carmichael's the OC. The Saints have had 10 games where if they won, they'd be tied for the league lead or in the league lead in terms of wins in the division in the NFC South. They're 1-9 in those games. The only win was in week 2 this year to go 2-0 and match Atlanta and Tampa.
Yeah, it's so depressing.
It's incredible. It's like they're allergic to it, and you think that this can't be sustainable, but then Dennis Allen sustained it for 4 years in
Oakland, right? And the interesting thing, I'll give Dennis Allen credit for this, and I said it last week, and I think I might have said it on our main show. Like, I'll give him credit for this. Like, at least against Jacksonville, he didn't coach scared, where he had multiple chances in that game, Jeff, to do like the sad defensive coach punt, and we're going to punt, and we're going to pin them back, and we're going to play defense. We're going to force them. We're going to force a 3 and out, and we're going to get better field position. And he was like, nah, we're on this side of the field. Who knows when we'll be back? Let's just go for it. And like, that's the right thing to do in 2023. And he did it a bunch of times, which gives me hope that maybe like the Saints hired some new analytics people and they just maybe they like go by his desk like real quietly and they like put a packet on his desk of like data. And it's like 18-point font and it's like 4 bullets. And, they just try to get him to, Coach, did you read my packet about going for it on 4th down? Like, I feel like he's getting better. So I want to give him a little credit. What do you see for this team as far as like defense? Do you have any like defensive metrics? Because defense, it's been really good, but I worry about like they're kind of bad at pass rush, and maybe Dennis Allen gets it fixed. Is there anything on defense that you look at and you're like, maybe this isn't going to keep on going? Like maybe this, not that they're a fraud, but like they need to be like a top 10 defense. Like they can't regress from like being top 5, top 8. They can't go from like 8 to like 13 and it be okay in 2023. You understand what I'm saying? Do you see anything on defense that you're like, I don't know? That worries you.
Not really. Like even the games, they didn't have a great first half against Jacksonville or Houston, but then they buttoned down. It's in the modern NFL, you're just every defense is going to give up points.
That's right.
But I think that we have enough data on the defense to say that like if they play at this level, then they just need the offense to score 27 points a game. Or not even every game, but like occasionally need to score that. And the offense is just like wholly incapable of doing it. Even if you need to. I mean, they gave up 41 points the last 2 games. They lost 2 games. They've gone 17 full games without scoring more than 3 offensive touchdowns in a game.
Oh my God.
Which the Steelers have 22 straight games, I believe, or 22 or 23.
Hey, wait, the Saints, when was the last? Seattle? Was it
Seattle game? Yeah.
Oh my God. That's a year of games. That is a
full season of games without scoring more than 3.
Like it's so bad. Like when I joked that it's as bad as Ditka and Deuce Wyndham put it up there, like he wasn't kidding. Like in 1998, Ditka averaged 19 points a game, and he had Danny Werfel, both Billy Joes, and Kerry Collins. Sean Dawkins was the leading receiver. Lamar Smith was the leading running back, and they averaged the same amount of points. This Saints team has so many good players. But a couple more things before we get out of here. What is like when they regress back on offense? Like let's say Derek Carr gets to not his peak, but like his historical mediocrity, like what we paid for, Jeff. We paid for a slightly kind of sort of maybe above average quarterback, Derek Carr. Like when he gets to that and when they start scoring touchdowns in the red zone, because eventually they will, and it'll regress. Like, what do you think that offense realistically is going to look like? Where is it going to fall? Is it going to fall like league average 16? Is it going to be what the Saints were last year? Like, where do you think it'll fall once we start to see some positive regression on offense, which we pray to God we get like soon, like Sunday?
I'm thinking of that Simpsons scene where he's thinking about what would happen, what his life would be like if he robs the Quickie Mart, and he sees himself and he's got the governor sash and he's in a tuxedo and he's in a mansion and Marge is dancing there next to him, and that's what we're gonna be like when we get the average offense. I mean, they just have to be average on offense, and the defense has to not be bad. The first half of last year, the defense was below average. They were slightly below average, and the offense was slightly above average, and they've switched. The offense has improved.
They have
the last 2 weeks, but they don't have the points for it, and so I wonder the degree to which that is a play calling thing. I mean, you look, stop running the fade to Michael Thomas, getting no separation. Run Taysom on short yards. Don't run Kamara 3 times and then bring in Taysom to score on 4th and 1. It's just they have a series of play calls. It doesn't feel like they've got a plan, and I feel like if you got a mediocre set of play calls in there and a mediocre offensive game plan, which Pete Carmichael does not seem to want to do, you'd have success and be mediocre. And they were the 10th team since the merger against Houston to lose a game by 7 or more, where they had over 400 yards and held the opponent to under 21 points and under 300 yards. Only the 10th team to lose
since
by
the merger.
Since the merger.
And
like
and
it was numbers. You then think of a stat that Dennis Allen has thrown to us like that.
And they didn't like most of those teams that did that for the merger. If I want to recall right, it was either you or somebody else posted it. I want to say 7 or 8 of those teams, they just were like -3 in turnover. So you were like, yes, you outgained this team and you had 400 or 500 yards off offense and they only had 200 or whatever, but you turned the ball over 4 times. You threw 3 picks and you were -4. Of course you freaking lost the game. The Saints were even. Well, I guess technically
2010 NFC Championship game.
technically they were -1 because of the pick at Derek Carr at the end of the game, and Bond intercepts it and fumbles it back. But it's just maddening to a certain extent. What do you see? Like, my instincts tell me, Jeff, that the Saints need to run Taysom more at the goal line. Like, I'm not going to argue, like, in the middle of the field, should they throw him the ball, this and that. But, like, it just seems to me that, like, Taysom on short yardage and goal-to-go situations is so good. And that's my just casual, while I drink and I watch it. Do you have like data that backs that up, that yes, please do Taysom more short yardage red zone because it's the one thing you kind of do well down there?
Yes. I mean, yeah, he's really good at it. I think he's converted like 3 of the last 4 times he's had that situation, 3rd or 4th and short. They've only had 2 3rd or 4th downs, I think, within 3rd and 3 or 4th and 3 or shorter. They really haven't had, or 3rd and 2 or 4th and 2 and shorter. They haven't had a lot of opportunities this year to use that package in short yardage. Now, that raises the question, like, they stupidly burned a timeout on their last drive against Jacksonville for no reason with a minute left. They still had the 2 timeouts. They've got 1st and goal from the 6. Why not run it, see what happens with Taysom, get a couple of yards closer? Instead, they threw 3 fades and then that ball that Morrow dropped.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem, and I think it speaks to Pete Carmichael rarely having a plan for using Taysom. I mean, they drove me nuts when they kept, every time Carr would throw for a 1st down, they bring Taysom in to run the ball. And it was one of the games, maybe it might have been the Tampa game, that they did it 3 or 4 times in a row. And it's like, how are you going to get, like, I don't like that usage of Taysom, but as a weapon, especially when he gets going, he's picked up 6 yards, 8 yards, and then we won't see him for a quarter or a half. Right. And it's maddening.
It's like, I think they have like on the calendar, like they have, it's Taysom week.
Right.
We are using Taysom no matter what. And other
Taysom weeks are usually good because that means
and some weeks it's like, nah, no Taysom this week. Even if it would help if it's like 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, like no Taysom this week. So it's extremely frustrating. So
this week will be telling because it's the best of the bad teams that we play.
Explain it. Explain the Colts. Explain it to us.
Well, they're not. I mean, they just gave up 38 points to PJ Walker.
It's right.
They're not a particularly good team, but they're not a particularly bad team. Them and Minnesota, in terms of EPA per play, are both barely negative. In DVOA, Indianapolis is 12th, so they're pretty good. Saints are 15th, Indy's at 16th.
Okay. Vegas 1 point spread for the Colts. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they're not a bad team. They have Gardner Minshew, who is not great, but is not atrocious. The Saints have had luck against him. He's gonna turn the ball over
a lot. Like not only picks. Like I was stunned. Like he's got fumbles too. He's got, I think, 5 picks and 4 fumbles. Like he turns the ball over a lot.
And you look at EPA per play, the only 2 quarterbacks who have been worse on long throws are Burrow Burrow is for throws 20 yards or more is the only quarterback with a lower EPA per play this season. Carr is nobody's got more than Carr. Carr has 41 attempts and he's got a negative 0.04. Like, do you know how hard you have to try to have a negative EPA per play when you're throwing it, and every time you complete it, it's going to be a big gain and it's going to be a big play? I mean, it's appalling.
Yeah, like you don't have to hit him like to like if he would just hit like 2 more, it would make such a difference. So
yeah, and he was good. Like he was good on those throws in the first couple of games, and it's been a night. And I think part of it is that they keep running these they don't use the middle of the field at all.
Yeah.
In terms of passing, the Saints, they throw it over the middle 16% of the time, which is, I think, 7th lowest in the NFL. And they got the 4th lowest yards after catch of any team. And then on deep throws, their yards after catch. So 20 or more air yards, their yards after catch is 1.5 yards, which only Dallas is worse. And they throw over the middle 9% of the time on deep throws. So they don't ever work the middle of the field in any way. And you think with Mike Thomas, running deep crossing routes, or Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed, really stressing the middle of the field would be easy, but they don't do that. And
their offense looks very disjointed and disorganized, where like even in Sean Payton, like when Jameis was struggling to run it and they were struggling in 2021 and they were like bottom of the league in passing, like you would look at it and it would be like, oh, that's a really pretty play. No one's fucking open, but it looked really nice, right? And like Kenny Stills is running around. He's covered. That guy's covered. This guy's covered. It looked really nice. No one's open. Now it's like you got guys practically bumping into each other and you're just.
I mean, Olave and Thomas are consistently running the same routes. Derek Carr does well and somebody drops it, or they run the wrong route, or something weird happens, or Derek Carr does terribly, and you're like, what the hell was that? CJ Stroud has never thrown an interception. We just got an interception. Our defense is good. Of course, Zach Vaughn is going to fumble it. It's just, and that I think goes beyond the advanced metrics. The metrics all say one thing. Dennis Allen's still the coach, and he invites. He just
Dennis Allen is a curve breaker.
He's that guy in Master and Commander that he just had to go overboard, and then all of a sudden the weather improved. I'm not suggesting anything ritual.
Not suggesting we throw Dennis Allen overboard yet.
Right.
2 things, and then we'll get out of here. The Colts. They're really, really bad on defense. I looked at them. They're like 30th in points allowed. But like when you look at their data, what does it say to you that like we might see on Sunday how the Saints are going to attack them?
That's a good question for an X's and O's guy. I'm a data guy. I mean, you have to think that they should have some success given the Colts' offensive woes. You have to think that Dennis Allen has a tendency to have the defense work. The less talented quarterbacks tend to not do as well.
That's right.
Against Dennis Allen's defenses. And it's not like the olden days where, it's rookie's making his first start, he's going to throw for 400 yards. I like to think that this is one that sets up okay for the Saints. But at the same time, the offense is in such a flux that even if they had, even Carolina, they didn't crush Carolina. That's the worst defense in the NFL, probably in a lot of ways. And they scored 20 on them.
Here's my final question, and then I want a prediction from you. But this is my question. I totally forgot. And I meant to ask. I meant to like DM you and ask you this. So if you don't have the data, it's fine because it's unfair. But the Saints are a penalty atrocity. Like they lead the league in like pass interference, holding, false start. Like it's a disaster. Do penalties? Is there like regression to like penalties, or to the mean of penalties, where like this waterfall of penalties, is that going to slow down, or do sort of more penalties begat more penalties because the referees are like, that's a penalty, that's a team that commits a shit ton of penalties, we're on the lookout for you, and it's sort of self-sustaining? Or will we see positive regression in that? Because right now, Jeff, the penalties are bad.
Usually you see regression to sort of an average. The only way you don't see regression is if your franchise has somehow pissed off the league office enough where there's a league-wide conspiracy amongst the officials that lasts several years. I don't know if we're dealing with that in this case. Right? I mean, usually it regresses, but like some of the holding, you could probably call holding on every play. Some of the penalties that they do that are just like bad players committing bad fouls, those things don't necessarily regress. And also they had Sean Hockley. Is that Ed Hockley's kid?
That's right.
I think that they're one of the most penalty heavy crews in the league. So that might be just a little bit of luck that they've had bad luck in terms of just penalty heavy crews. That's why you kind of assume it's gonna
Get a little better.
out. But then again, if you've got a Brandon Browner on your team, penalties are not going to regress. They're just sometimes it's just the players are making mistakes. Or if you've got poor coaching on the offense, you're going to have a lot of false starts, and that's not going to regress because they're going to call those almost every time.
All right, Jeff. When me and you, final week of the year, and we're talking on Twitter, maybe we're having a few drinks. NFC South. Do you still believe that the Saints are going to get it together, or are you going to hitch your wagon to like Arthur Smith or Todd Bowles? Like, what's going to happen in the crummy NFC South? Who's winning it?
My heart says the 9-7 New Orleans Saints.
9-7-1.
All right, not 9-8.
God.
Maybe 10-7 if we're lucky. My head says we probably go 7-10 again.
Oh God.
And I think Atlanta is probably Atlanta or Tampa. I think Atlanta, but maybe they win it at 8-9 or 9-8. Not like a roaring success for anybody this year. I wonder, like, I want the team to win the division. It's fun. Playoff football is fun. It's like we were so bad for our childhoods that anytime it's a blessing. But also, I don't want them to go 9-8 and then be like, all right, we're betting.
We're fine. We're good. No changes. Honestly, if you told me right now, if you said Saints will be 8-8, Atlanta will be 9-7. Final week of the year, winner wins the South. You can have that, or you can have what's behind door number 2. I would take that in a heartbeat. It would crush me emotionally because losing to the Falcons final week of the year, they win the division title on the Superdome field would be traumatic. I'd probably want everyone fired, including Gale, out of a cannon if I had to witness that. But I would take it right now because if they got to 8-8, that would mean they would finish 5. They would, in the next 9 games, they would go 5-4. And I kind of think that's like close to.
If they're competitive against one of the 3 good teams on their schedule, or really 2 good teams, Detroit and Los Angeles, and maybe they somehow win one of them. I mean, Detroit is clearly beatable. Los Angeles is beatable. So if they steal one of those, and then they've got they've got games against teams that they should be beating. The numbers say that they're better than these teams, but the numbers aren't everything. And if they don't get better from Derek Carr, it's just bad things happen. So I think my fear is that they've already dug themselves in such a hole in losing the 2 division games that we could come in at 8-8 against Atlanta, and Atlanta's already got it sewed up.
Oh God. I put this podcast was supposed to be positive, Jeff.
Well, let's end on a positive note. The uniforms look good.
That's right.
They all seem to be having fun and listening to their coaches and trying their hardest. I'm in 5-6 baseball mode here.
That's right.
The advanced numbers say it. They should win the division. This should be the best team in the division, and all the metrics that are normally correct say that.
All right, guys. Jeff, thanks for joining us. You can find Jeff. He told you where you can find him on Twitter, and his link is in the description of the podcast, guys. So thanks for joining us. Find us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Saints Happy Hour. Find us, subscribe, and check us out if you like the free version of this. And guys, thanks to Jeff for joining us. Thanks for Thomas back in Poland. He's going to be doing post-production on this, doing an amazing job as always. I'm Ralph Malbrough. Until next time, the bar is closed.